There we go. That's better. Doesn't really matter. That's not what you want to see, though. Okay. How do you get rid of that? Good enough. Okay. Okay, so that's where we are. Okay, now shortly after this, Sankab is going to go into the actual explanation of how to develop bodhicitta. So this is sort of like it's I mean that's the overall section, but this is more about just like how people can be inspired, different ways people can be inspired to achieve enlightenment. And then he does say later on, I'll just point it out now, we'll get to the actual verse or sentence, but he does mention that some of these ways are not genuine bodhicitta because it's more just like someone, again, kind of just like spontaneously going like, wow, I really want to achieve enlightenment. That sounds so great. Like being inspired by seeing the great powers of the Buddha, by seeing the miracle powers or something, right? I mean, that's a lot of people get inspired towards religion in general, right? By seeing either directly witnessing or even just hearing about miracles, right? This is what Sangha is saying here, right? You remember, right? He says you see the powers of the Buddha. The powers here means like miracle powers, right? Or you not even seeing them, you hear about them or read about them. Well, yeah, like lots of people get inspired to spiritual paths because of that, right? It's not really that abnormal. So here it's saying not just being inspired to a spiritual path, but to the Mahayana, to the path to awakening, right? So that's kind of like a faith-based approach in a way, right? But Tsongkhapa does point out that it's not actual bodhicitta, and we'll read about it and see why he says that. Okay, so concerning how the spirit of enlightenment arises from these four conditions, it is said that they inspire you to attain great enlightenment. So a desire to attain enlightenment arises. The ways in which this happens are as follows. One, after you see or hear about supernormal powers, right? Miracles. You're just saying miracles, right? Keep it simple. You are awed, thinking, I will attain such an enlightenment, and then generate the spirit of enlightenment. Okay? Now again, in like if it's like a Indian tradition, right? Generally, you see or hear about someone's miracle powers, and you go, wow, I want to attain something like that, right? In Western traditions, you hear about Jesus's, Moses's, whatever these miracles, God's miracles, and you go, wow, I want to. What do you go? I want to do God, but I don't know. I wanted something with God. I don't know. It's different, right? The whole framework is so different. The whole way of thinking of the cultures is so different that you don't say, I want to become Jesus, but I don't know why not. But anyway, that's just a different way of thinking, right? It would make sense to want to become Jesus. I don't know. It makes sense to me. But leave aside that it's quite arrogant to think that, or it would be seen that way at least. But so anyway, the point is you get inspired by something that's unusual and that just shows like the power of that is possible, right? The possible power that we don't normally acknowledge or know. Through hearing, number two, through hearing about the good qualities of the Buddha from an instructor, you first develop faith, and then there arises a desire to attain these qualities. Okay, again, so here it could be miracle powers. Here it could also just be the great compassion of the Buddha, the great wisdom of the Buddha, the omniscient mind of the Buddha that knows all phenomena, all the minds of all living beings, right? So again, Buddha here is like God, actually, right? I mean, Buddhism is so funny because there's such a huge effort to logically, using reasoning, right, make it very clear that God does not exist, right? To logically deny the existence of a creator God. But that's a creator God, right? At the same time, the Buddha himself has many qualities that are attributed to the creator gods and the traditions that believe in them, right? Or believe in it, him, whatever, right? That believe in a creator God. So the Buddha take out the facet of having created the universe, and whatever qualities of God are left, the Buddha has those qualities, right? I mean, it's not permanent, right? Not omnipotent. So take out omnipotence, take out being unchanging or permanent. Take out creating the universe, but then the infinite love, the omniscience, right? All these things pervading all of reality, all phenomena. The Buddha has those qualities, right? So you could call it kind of like God light, right? Like God, but without the omnipotence and the creating. So it's more like, so that's why it's much more logically feasible, right? It's something that you can really think, well, yeah, a human being can actually evolve their own mind to the point of this Buddha figure. That's what Shakyamuni did. He was an ordinary person. He evolved to this point and then get inspired by that. Oh yeah, I want to do that too. Okay. On finding the thought of the number 3, on finding the thought of the decline of the Mahayana teaching unbearable, you develop the desire to attain a Buddha's sublime wisdom. In regard to this last point, you see that if the teaching does not disappear, the suffering of living beings can be stopped. Right? So you obviously as someone who has some understanding of what the Mahayana teachings are about, right? And that they help people, right? I mean, it's sort of like what's happening in our, I mean, not to get political, but just to make an observation, it's really happening, right? That the current federal government is making so many changes to the institutions that exist, like in regards to medicine and, you know, I mean, it's many things, energy, right? Renewable energy, medicine, all these things, right? Electric vehicles. And they're like saying, you know, oh, these things are important, they're not aligned with our interests. Well, so someone could look at that and go, it's unbearable. It's so beneficial. Vaccines are so beneficial. They've saved millions upon millions of lives. How much countless unimaginable suffering have they prevented? I can't let this go away. I'm going to become president, or I'm going, you know, I'm going to whatever, stop this from happening. So this is sort of right this way of thinking. I can't imagine the Mahayana teaching dying from this world. It's just too beneficial. I have to do something to keep it in the world. So even though your objective is indeed to remove suffering, nevertheless, the principal condition for the spirit of enlightenment arising is your inability to bear the fact that the teaching might disappear. Otherwise, this way of developing the spirit would repeat the explanation presented later on in this text of how the spirit arises in dependence on compassion. Okay, why is Tsongkhapa even saying that? Like, why add that little note there? That would be like in a modern day text or teaching, it would be like a footnote, right? It would be like, I'm laying this out, but footnote, right? What's going on is that he's saying we don't want to repeat ourselves in the text. I'm not giving you, right, the same point up here in page 30, you know, whatever, around 35, and then again on page 40. Like, no, I'm not doing that. Here we're talking about someone who's inspired to attain enlightenment by seeing, so compassion's part of that motivation, but primarily it's when they see that the teaching's in danger of declining. The Mahayana teachings later on, he's going to just talk directly about compassion and how that leads to the spirit of enlightenment. So he's just pointing out that I'm not repeating myself. Don't worry. That's all this is. Okay. So that kind of thing happens in this text, right? Where Tsongkhapa sort of, it's like a meta commentary on what he's doing in the text, but it's just the formatting is just different than how we would expect to see it, so it can get confusing, right? I mean, I would think this would be more like a footnote. It was because if you look at the text, Tsongkhapa doesn't have any footnotes, right? There are footnotes by the translators that go into certain things, but okay. After number 4, after you see how rare this most purposeful spirit is, you develop a desire to attain Buddhahood, spurred on principally by this awareness, right? So again, this is talking about this kind of challenge mindset, right? Wow, how many people in the world have become a Buddha or even generated this bodhicitta, right? It's sort of like, wow, you know, look at all these great athletes and runners and, you know, the footballers, right? We're having the World Cup, all these great people playing football. Well, how many people have scored, you know, 100 goals in one game? I'm going to do it. I don't know, 100 is probably not possible, but 10 even, I don't know. Soccer games get very low scores, right? It's like 2-3 goals. I don't know how they. It's too much suspense though. So you're gonna go? Oh, probably not. For 90 minutes, you only get 2 goals. Okay, but that's fine. You can play Quidditch if you want a really high scoring game, right? Yeah, that big right. Harry Potter game. I think they get high scores there. Or basketball. After you see, so now he's giving another footnote, right? With regard to the two components of the spirit of enlightenment, the desire to attain enlightenment and the aim of the welfare of all beings, right? Two components of bodhicitta. Again, the spirit of enlightenment, that's just the translation that this text is using. It means bodhicitta. Those are exactly the same, synonymous. Okay, so bodhicitta here has two aims, two components: the desire to attain enlightenment and the aim of the welfare of all beings. Okay, so when you actually are trying to understand what is this bodhicitta, like when you have it in your mind, like what is happening, what are you doing? It's like there's a causal motivation, which is compassion to benefit all sentient beings. And then there's the actual motivation that comes in the bodhicitta itself, which is the desire to attain enlightenment. Okay, so one's a causal motivation and one's there together with the bodhicitta. That's really the defining quality of bodhicitta, right? The desire to attain enlightenment for the welfare of all beings, the welfare of others. So when you say for the welfare of others, the bodhicitta itself is not compassion, okay? It's a result of compassion. That's just, might sound like a pedantic, kind of cutting hairs kind of difference, but hey, when we're actually sitting and meditating, the mind is actually doing something, right? There's something in your mind. You're having an appearance, you're having an experience. It's important to understand what is the experience of bodhicitta. Is it thinking about all beings and thinking of their suffering? No, that's just not what is meant by bodhicitta. That's a different experience. That's the experience of compassion. That is the cause for bodhicitta. Okay. With regard to the two components, the desire to attain enlightenment and the aim of the welfare of all beings, this fourth development of the spirit of enlightenment is established in terms of producing a desire to attain enlightenment and is not established in terms of the aim. Okay, so here, Tsongkhapa again, footnote, this particular way of saying bodhicitta, it's not really bodhicitta because it's not necessarily motivated by the aim of benefiting other sentient beings. It's really just like, wow, it's so amazing. This enlightenment thing is so amazing. I'll do it too, right? Without really even necessarily considering the suffering of others. Okay, without the desire to attain Buddhahood that comes from cultivating faith in a Buddha's good qualities, you cannot overcome the sense of contentment. So this is like this very, again, here we have like a lot of text, right? It's like kind of all packed together. Each sentence in this section is just kind of like making a very specific philosophical point. So we'll just read through it and then I'll ask you guys, what did you get out of it, and see if you get something out of it. Without the desire to attain Buddhahood that comes from cultivating faith in the Buddha's good qualities, you cannot overcome the sense of contentment that thinks peace or nirvana alone is sufficient to fulfill your own aims. The desire to attain Buddhahood on account of training in love and compassion and seeing the fulfillment of others' aims as a necessity can eradicate the sense of contentment that thinks your peace alone is sufficient to fulfill others' aims, but cannot stop the sense of contentment that thinks peace is enough for your own aims. Besides this desire to attain Buddhahood that comes from cultivating faith in a Buddha's good qualities, there is no other way to stop the sense of contentment that thinks your peace alone is sufficient to fulfill your own aims. Indeed, you do need to overcome the sense of contentment that peace alone is enough to accomplish your own welfare, because one, Hinayana practitioners who are merely liberated from cyclic existence have only a partial elimination of thoughts and a partial knowledge, and thus lack perfect fulfillment of their own aims. Two, these practitioners are liberated from the problems of cyclic existence, but not from the problems of peace. And three, the perfect fulfillment of one's own aims, it is said, is a Buddha's embodiment of truth. Therefore, once you cultivate faith in the good qualities of the Buddha, you will see that you must obtain Buddhahood to accomplish even your own aims, let alone the aims of others. Understanding this is important for causing you not to turn back toward the Hinayana. Okay, how many of us understood this? He's saying at the end that understanding this is important for causing you not to turn back toward the Hinayana. So it's important to understand this. What is he saying? What does it mean? Anybody have any idea? Anyone want to give a thought? Try and summarize this. You're the AI now. you're Chat GPT summarizing this paragraph. What do you think?
Sure.
Okay.
So if we attain nirvana, then that will be the complete elimination of suffering in our lives. And so we might tend to think, well, that's good enough for me. I just need to attain nirvana and I can accomplish my aims just by completely being free from suffering. I don't need to become fully enlightened as a Buddha, which is more than just attaining nirvana. And so, in order to not feel like that's good enough for me just to eliminate suffering, we should really think about all of the Buddha's good qualities. And, because really just attaining nirvana will eliminate suffering. By becoming a Buddha, will accomplish our highest happiness. So, in order to not just be content with something that's not our highest happiness, we should really think of good qualities of becoming a Buddha.
Good. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so I'll try and say it in a slightly different way, but that's correct. Everything Neil just said. So what this first paragraph is highlighting is that there are these two. The translation here is using the phrase sense of contentment. That's fine. I mean, I haven't thought about too much how I would translate this phrase, but whatever, that seems fine. Sense of contentment, which is one, that it is that, so sense of contentment with what? A sense of contentment with nirvana. Okay? Sense of contentment with nirvana. Okay? So again, Mahayana, Hinayana. Mahayana, all the Mahayana teachings, like there's throughout all of them, there's this thread of making a distinction, right? Having a contrast between the Mahayana practices and the Hinayana practices. Why? Well, because frankly, exactly what Tsongkhapa is pointing out in this paragraph is that yes, nirvana is an extremely amazing result or goal. It's an extremely amazing state that you could attain. It is the stated goal of Buddhist practice, like the general goal of Buddhist practice throughout the world. For the 800 million Buddhists, nirvana. Okay, sure. Now, should you be content with nirvana alone? Not in the Mahayana. That's the big contrast. Okay, Mahayana practitioners not content with nirvana alone. Okay, but there are two ways that you can be content with nirvana alone. One is in relation to helping others. One is in relation to helping yourself. So you might just be content to achieve nirvana alone in relation to others, helping others by just being like, well, it's great to help others. I have compassion for others. Not great compassion. I have compassion for others. I have love for others. Right? I'm talking about like a highly realized, like a Hinayana practitioner on the path of meditation, who's ready to achieve nirvana, right? Some, person like that. They have great stable meditation. They have already realized emptiness, right? All these great qualities. And so they're thinking, okay, now I have to attain nirvana. They're contented with that. That's good enough. Good enough. In relation to helping others, because, hey, I have love for them. I have compassion for them. I care about them. But it's not really my responsibility to liberate them. That's not really my responsibility. My responsibility is to liberate myself. That sense of contentment is a type of self-cherishing. That attitude is a type of self-cherishing thought, right? The main enemy in the Mahayana, the main enemy is self-cherishing thought, right? It's the obstacle to bodhicitta, okay? Then they can also have a sense of contentment or sense of that it's good enough to achieve nirvana in relation to their own well-being, their own happiness, okay? So what's that attitude is just Yeah, and not only is it not my responsibility to liberate others, but hey, if I achieve nirvana, I'm done. You know, human goal has been the goal of human life, the best of this that this world has to offer, that this human life has to offer, done. I got it. Success. Satisfied. Good enough. Okay. So Kaba is saying both of those are erroneous. Both of them are types of um, are erroneous. But the first one is a type of self-cherishing thought, right? The second one is more just a type of ignorance. Second one meaning nirvana is good enough for me. So you can, to really generate bodhicitta and sustain it, that's what he's saying in the last line, last sentence. Understanding this is important for causing you not to turn back toward the Hinayana. That means after you become a Mahayana practitioner, you really have this bodhicitta. You are a bodhisattva. You can still fall back to the Hinayana, sorry. You can still fall back to the Hinayana. So Tsongkhapa is saying, you train in great compassion, you train in love, you do these meditations, you take on the responsibility to free all beings from suffering. You realize that it's not satisfactory, it's not good enough to achieve liberation for yourself, to achieve nirvana. I have to become Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. You have that great compassion, you generate bodhicitta, so you've overcome the sense of contentment with achieving nirvana in relation to benefiting others. You've overcome that kind of self-cherishing. But what if there's still this attitude of, well, but really, if I just want it just for my own well-being, my own happiness, nirvana really would be enough. I don't really need Buddhahood for that. Well, Tsongkhapa is saying you also need to counteract that attitude. But how? By meditating on the Buddhist qualities and the nature of Buddhahood and what it really means. Then you'll see that actually, even for my own true happiness, I need to achieve Buddhahood. Why does that help cause you not to turn back toward the Hinayana? Why should you need to also, not just having the compassion and love for others that motivates you to want to become Buddha, to help them, but even just understanding that what it really means to be truly happy, to be a truly fulfilled human being, means to be a Buddha, fully awakened for yourself. Why is that important for not turning back to the Hinayana, do you think? Well, just imagine the situation where someone's a bodhisattva, maybe in early training, in the first path, we would say, right? Path of accumulation. And they have compassion, they have love, but it's not like completely immovable, completely stable, right? It's enough to get them to, commit their lives to the path of, to the bodhisattva path. But what happens when they meet an obstacle? What happens when they are faced with someone, an army of people trying to tear their, cut their limbs off and, throwing them up and torturing them and, who knows what? What happens when, someone burns their village down and takes their family and takes their possessions and steals all their wealth, right? Well, someone in that case might start to question and might go, I can't do it anymore. I just can't do it. I don't have strong enough love and compassion. You know what? I'm just going to go back and achieve liberation. So if that kind of thinking starts to happen, well, if they've trained in understanding that even liberation isn't good enough for their own welfare, then they're going to think what? Oh, well, actually, that's not even going to help me. If I just go back to working for my own liberation, I still am not going to achieve the full satisfaction, right? Fully achieve my own aims. Oh, I may as well just keep working for others, right? So even if the compassion and love gets a little weak at some point, then this will sustain you so that your bodhicitta doesn't completely get lost. Okay?
They don't even understand what their own aims are.
Who?
So Kappa.
No, who is understand? Who doesn't understand?
And that practitioner who doesn't want to attain Buddhahood, it says, in the previous, middle of that paragraph, that they can't even attain their own desires. Well, they are their own desires just to become liberated for themselves. Is he saying, no, you're actually not attaining your own desires because you don't even understand what your desires are. If you want true liberation for yourself, you have to attain Buddhahood.
Yeah, so here desires it doesn't mean, well, I think it's aims. It says aims, yeah. So that word aims here is right. It's another one of these kind of, maybe the translation makes it a little confusing. But what it just means is what really is the highest form of satisfaction and fulfillment, right? So basically, Tsongkhapa is saying, right, you haven't really understood what true fulfillment really is for a human being, what the true highest potential for a human being really is.
Yeah, so you're saying I achieve on it, and that's my aim. It's a mistaken view of the aim.
Right. That's why I said it's kind of an ignorance.
Yeah, right.
It's more of an ignorance than self-cherishing. Yeah, if you think I achieved nirvana because I'm not really ready to take on the responsibility to really devote my whole life to others and liberate them, that would just that I thought that's not my job. That's I can't do it or whatever it is, right? That would be self-cherishing, right? Where you're really just thinking yourself is more important. Which the Mahayana accepts that arhats have that, even arhats, right, who are liberated from samsara. But like you're saying, Scott, it's really more, it's this misunderstanding, this other kind of contentment where you're just like, well, not worried, not thinking about, not addressing others for the moment, but just in relation to your own potential. Like nirvana is the best there is, it's good enough, right? As good as Buddhahood, or just not thinking about Buddhahood. In reality, Tsongkhapa is saying that's a misunderstanding. Buddhahood, even for yourself, is really a greater happiness. That's what he's saying. Yeah. And so to understand that, we have to meditate on, develop faith in the Buddha's qualities. The Buddha's unique qualities. Okay, very good. So it sounds like everybody understands it. Hopefully, somewhat. None of us perfectly will understand it, but somewhat. Among the four developments of the spirit of enlightenment explained above, the first two are not induced by compassion and love. In other scriptures and treatises as well, there are many explanations of the development of the spirit of enlightenment as the desire to attain Buddhahood, induced by just seeing the good qualities of a Buddha's embodiment of truth and embodiment of form. Okay, so those are, again, that's another translation for the two bodies, right? Embodiment is saying it means the two bodies. That's just a different English translation. So that's the truth body and the form body. That's more standard or common translation, okay? Truth body is what? That's the Buddha's mind that actually is aware of all phenomena, the omniscient mind of the Buddha, and the emptiness of the mind of the Buddha, the emptiness of the Buddha. Those two compose the truth body. The form body is the Nirmanakaya, right? The emanation body, Nirmanakaya, and the Sambhogakaya, okay, the enjoyment body. So those are the bodies or the aspects, better just the aspects of the Buddha that other beings can interact with, right? The Dharmakaya, the truth body, that's only the Buddhas themselves can perceive it. No other being can perceive the Dharmakaya. But the emanation body, or here it says the form body, which is two bodies, the emanation body and the enjoyment body. Those are the aspects of the Buddha that other beings can perceive. Like, what would be an example of form body that anyone know? You can perceive? Like Shakyamuni Buddha. Right. Shakyamuni Buddha is a form body of a Buddha. Okay. So Shakyamuni Buddha's mind, we cannot perceive. We can perceive Shakyamuni Buddha. Okay. His words and his form, right? Okay. So now it's just Tsongkhapa is just kind of addressing the same point still in a different way. That there are these two different aspects of bodhicitta, and each one has to be developed sort of individually. The one is the aspect of the motivation of compassion to benefit others, but then the other one is the aspect of understanding what enlightenment means, understanding what a Buddha is, and why it's so valuable. Why should you want to attain it, right? So here Tsongkhapa is saying now there are some people who are inspired to attain Buddhahood without compassion just because they see these amazing qualities of the Buddha, right? Without the compassion part. The determination to establish all beings in Buddhahood is also said to be the development of the spirit. So you must consider each of these two to be counted as simply developments of the spirit of enlightenment. In other words, they're not genuine, they're not full bodhicitta, right? So if someone says they've developed the desire for enlightenment by just seeing the Buddha's good qualities, oh, these great miracles, the Buddha can fly and spit fire out of his fingers and all these amazing things, right? Buddha can emanate and be in a million places at once, all these amazing miracles. I want to be Buddha. That attitude, I want to be Buddha based on seeing those miracles, that's not genuine bodhicitta. Okay. So that's why I say simply in Tibetan. Again, it's this funny word that it's a fine translation, but when we say this term in Tibetan, it actually indicates more like a partial or not like it's not the official bodhicitta, right? It's like a some kind of like almost a fake version or something. It's not the full version. It's simply developments of the spirit of enlightenment. With regard to developing a completely perfect spirit of enlightenment, however, it is not sufficient merely to have the desire to attain Buddhahood upon seeing the necessity of fulfilling others' aims. You must have the desire to attain Buddhahood that sees that it is indispensable even for your own aims. So it's still driving the same point in. Furthermore, this intention must not neglect others' welfare, but be for others' sake as well. Okay, so it's a combination of these two. Understanding Buddhahood is the best act, the most highest fulfillment of your own, potential as a human, the best possible happiness there can be for yourself, but also you have to have desire to benefit others, right? Understanding the need to fulfill others' welfare, others' aims. Furthermore, this intention must not neglect others' welfare, but be for others' sake as well, because the ornament for clear knowledge, Abhisamala Alamkara by Maitreya, talks about both the intention to attain enlightenment and the intention to accomplish others' welfare. When it says talks about, it just means like it's actually giving a definition of bodhicitta, and these are the two parts of the definition. The development of the spirit of enlightenment is the desire for perfect enlightenment for others' welfare. Yeah, so simply that second line there, right? The desire for perfect enlightenment for others' welfare. It's got the two right in there, one line, right? The desire for perfect enlightenment for others' welfare. That is bodhicitta. Okay. The development of the spirit through the four causes. Okay, let's see, what time are we at? We're going to skip this section today. We can come back to it. Oh, it's pretty short. I guess we'll just read it. We can just read it, yeah. Any questions? Comments?
Talk about like the beings of, small, medium, big capacity. So the Hinayana is kind of like the beings of medium capacity, right? They're trying to achieve liberation for their own, sake, right?
Yeah, that's a great observation. Yeah, so if we're going to take the three types of beings or the three capacities and kind of overlay that into the vehicles, right? Someone who is in the first person of initial capacity, right? Small capacity, according to this Lamrim presentation, they wouldn't actually technically be in any vehicle, right? It's only when you actually get to the medium capacity that you can become even genuinely a Hinayana practitioner, meaning that you have actual renunciation and you're on the path of accumulation. But yeah, go ahead.
And so you have to have generate a lot of passion for other sentient beings, even on that, that level. So
yes.
It's like there's almost this gray area about, like just that final level of being a great capacity where you start like articulating that I'm going to take everyone else's well-being into the path. As opposed to it's already in the path for being some medium capacity. Right. It's not like it's not in there.
Right. No, yeah. Well, and some kappa will go into that in the next chapter a little bit more detail too. Exactly. But that's exactly right. It is hard to see, right? I mean, on the one hand, it's hard just because, it's difficult for us as it's difficult to really separate out like the culture and what's actually happening in like the sense of Buddhist traditions, and then just the psychology of an individual practitioner who we're one of, right? So in terms of like talking about this distinction, I think it's really easy to lump together Mahayana with Mahayana Buddhists, Mahayana, in a Mahayana Buddhist tradition, Chinese Buddhist, the Taiwanese, the Vietnamese Buddhist, the Tibetan Buddhist, right, Zen Buddhist, and then to lump Hinayana with people in Hinayana Buddhist tradition, the Thai people, the Sri Lankan people, right? Then when we say, oh, so the Mahayana means that you have to have this special kind of compassion, and the Hinayana means that you don't have that, even though you, right? So it kind of feels like we're judging those like hundreds of millions of Buddhists in the world, right? Like, you're not as good, like, right? But wait, so we have to be able to make a distinction here that we're talking about an individual being, person, and different types of mind states that can arise in a person. And it may be the case that various cultures are more supportive or encouraging of one mind state or over another. And that's okay, but it's not, there's no judgment in that. That's just people have different karma and they're born where they're born and meet the teachings they meet, whatever. But that's not the point of this discussion, right? The point of this discussion is to understand how to develop bodhicitta, right? And what's the difference between having it versus not having it, right? And that's something that you have to do, the internal introspection, right? You got to kind of introspect and see, is my meditation on compassion, on bodhicitta, is it matching up with what Tsongkhapa is expressing here, or what the Buddha expresses in the Mahayana Sutras, right? Or Shantideva's text is probably the best guide to go by, right? Which Tsongkhapa quotes from extensively throughout this chapter, throughout this volume. But yes, that's a good question. And so when we talk about the four immeasurables, right? Immeasurable love, compassion, equanimity, and it's called mudita, which is sort of this rejoicing, joy in others' happiness, sympathetic joy. Then those are actually understood, at least in this, I think, pretty much by all Buddhists, as being things that anyone can develop, meaning you don't even have to be Buddhist to develop those, right? But to develop great passion, then not only do you have to be Buddhist, you have to kind of go beyond the four immeasurables. It's more than immeasurable compassion. It's great compassion because that's what really takes the responsibility to help others. Not just help others, but to liberate others. Okay, to develop the spirit of enlightenment through the four strengths, you develop the spirit through relying on the four strengths. 1, the strength of yourself, the desire to attain perfect enlightenment through your own power. 2, the strength of others, the desire to attain perfect enlightenment through others' power. 3, the strength of the cause, developing the spirit by having been familiar with the Mahayana and now merely hearing praise of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. 4, the strength of application. In this life, being accustomed for a long time to such virtuous activities as relying upon an excellent being and reflecting on the teachings you have heard. Okay, furthermore, Asanga's Bodhisattva levels. Okay, so just pointing out here, why is Tsongkhapa going through the effort to put this in the text in the first place? Well, it's a throwback to Asanga, right? Asanga described this in Bodhisattva levels. Tsongkhapa wants to be complete. He wants to give this like big picture understanding of bodhicitta. Okay, well, we have to include what Asanga said in Bodhisattva level. So it's not really, again, it's not a main focus. It's not like we are training to do these things. It's just sort of a mention. This is a way in which people, various, because of different conditions, develop bodhicitta in slightly different ways. So what does Bodhisattva level says? After you depend on the four causes and four conditions, whether individually or collectively, you generate a firm spirit of enlightenment if you develop it from your own strength or from the strength of the cause. It is not firm if you develop it from other strength or from the strength of application. Once you have understood well that the teaching in general and the Mahayana teaching in particular are about to disappear, and that this time is particularly degenerate, you realize that a spirit of enlightenment developed from the depths of the heart is extremely rare. Rely on an excellent teacher and make an effort to practice, studying and reflecting, etc., upon the Mahayana scriptural collection, and plant a root for the development of the spirit from the depths of your heart, not forced by others, nor mindlessly following others, nor through the habit of custom, but through your own strength. All the bodhisattva deeds are necessarily based on it. So Tsongkhapa sort of ends this section by saying, it's kind of like this is like the transition, right? He's saying, okay, we just went through these different ways of developing bodhicitta. What is the best of those ways? What is the way that's really going to be stable? Well, so that's why what he's saying, right? So you have to first kind of combine from the four conditions that were mentioned that we started with, kind of combine all those, right? Like see that the teachings are in danger of decline, see how precious they are, see the great qualities of the Buddha, right? Realize that the spirit of enlightenment, bodhicitta, is extremely rare. You're ready to accept the challenge. All those together, good. Now, rely on an excellent teacher, make an effort to practice, plant a root from the depth of your heart, not forced by others. So that was in these we just went through them so quickly, but that was up here, right? The strength of yourself versus the strength of others. So Tsongkhapa was saying, bodhicitta not through the strength of others, through the strength of yourself. Okay. Then rely on the scriptural collections, Mahayana scriptural collections, study, reflect, not forced by others, not mindlessly following others, not through the habit of custom, through your own strength. Okay? Develop the spirit of enlightenment. And that's what he's going to explain next. Okay, so now he's actually going into then how do you actually develop the spirit of enlightenment? So this is sort of the transition from this sort of more kind of descriptive way of looking at bodhicitta to, okay, now this is how you train to really develop that best stable bodhicitta that really fulfills the definition of having both those aspects of understanding clearly what enlightenment is and why it's so important even for your own happiness, but also that great compassion that seeks to benefit all sentient beings. Okay, so then it brings us to compassion, the entrance to the Mahayana. Okay, so any questions?
Was it before the four strengths, there was another list of four things?
Yeah, the four conditions, yeah. Four causes, or I think it was causes. Sorry. Oh, there's the four. Okay, so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There's the four. So right, it's all. There's 12 altogether. Yeah, sorry. The four conditions where we started, then the four causes, then the four strengths.
Okay.
Right. So he's saying that all four of these, like we have to have, right? The four causes, right? In the last paragraph here, that's sort of summarizing all that, right? He's saying rely on an excellent teacher. So that was right, being sustained by a teacher. Compassion toward living beings, of course, not being behind a perfect lineage. That just means in this context, it doesn't mean that you have the your familial lineage. It means you're in the lineage of Mahayana, the Buddha lineage, right? The Mahayana lineage of bodhisattvas.
This sounds like of the four like causes from the beginning of like whether it's rare or whether it's difficult or whether you're inspired by miraculous powers, that of those that seeing generating bodhicitta due to it being like rare and being degenerate times it's about to go away is like the best. Is that the correct reading? What he's saying at the end? No,
he's saying he's kind of combining all.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like he puts it all into like one sentence. Once you have understood well that the Mahayana teaching is about to disappear, and this time in particular is degenerate, you realize that it is extremely rare. So it's like that was two of them already, right?
What was the other one?
Of those four?
Yeah.
So it was seeing that the teaching is about to decline and not being able to bear that, developing the spirit of enlightenment, and then realizing that it's extremely rare. So that's two of them. And then the other two were seeing the great qualities of the Buddha, either directly as one, or then just hearing about them from a teacher. So then he's saying rely on a teacher, right? So I mean, he's not going, it's just summary, kind of like a summary verse, but he's not even directly, he's not making it clear. He's not saying like, okay, going back to those four conditions, you have to have this or this. He's just kind of, again, it's sort of like these are different explanations that come from other texts or sutras, and he's trying to include them. So this is sort of just how do you include them? Well, you just understand these all can contribute to your development of bodhicitta.
For instance, like it doesn't say particularly in here, like regarding the first one, like being inspired by the Buddha's like miraculous powers.
Yeah, well, we can't do that. We don't have the option because we can't. There's no Buddha. that one's our window is closed. The door is closed.
You can read about
You can hear about that. So that's the second one, right? So those are listed as two different conditions, right? Yeah. So the first one we don't really have the option to do. Yeah. Yes, it.
Just business about lineage.
What is it about perfect lineage?
Yeah, I'm lying,
No, perfect lineage, right? It just means so it doesn't mean your family lineage or whatever. It means that you're in the lineage of the bodhisattvas. You have the family, the propensity to bodhicitta.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you should talk about it at Chen Center about how Rinpoche's teachings were from this teacher, from that teacher, from that teacher, that there's.
Oh no, it doesn't mean that.
Doesn't mean that.
No,
like
no,
the
no.
teachings have been consecutively, that they're perfect teachings, but also because of that passing down correctly the teachings over time as the lineage, not like literally DNA lineage, but the teachings have been passed down over time through a lineage so that they're not corrupted.
I would have to just double check the Tibetan, which I don't have in front of me side, but I'm quite positive that the term lineage here is the same term that's used for like family or class, something like that. And in this context, so it's not the same term that's used for teacher-student lineage. I don't know why it's just your question is just pointing out to me that it's kind of another odd translation choice to use the same English word for these two very different concepts. But either way, I believe this is translating a different term completely, which is in reference to your like class essentially, or your family kind of race. It's actually the same word used for race, something like that. And so here, when it says a perfect lineage, in the sense of your race or class, it means that you're in the bodhisattva group of family, you can say, right? You have that propensity to bodhicitta. But I'll double check that. Either way, though, yeah, if you have a teacher here, right, a reliable teacher, then that is going to have a lineage going back to the Buddha, right? Make sense? Yeah, you have to. And some of these questions are hard because you got to kind of look at the Tibetan again just to make sense of what's even being said. Yeah, I'll double check that and get back to you. Okay, anything else? Compassion. Okay. Okay, so it's going to go through the 7 cause and effect instructions, but the root of that is compassion, right? So then we talk about the importance of compassion in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of the path. Okay. Okay, so we can spend the last few minutes just doing a meditation on compassion. Okay, so there's a lot that is possible to say about compassion. Just leave this. There's a lot to be said about compassion, and at the same time, it's very simple, right? Through understanding your own suffering, right? How do you understand suffering? Well, you have to experience some level of suffering, right? Can't really understand suffering through just hearing about it or seeing people crying and looking very, very sad or upset or poor or right ill. Okay, yes, that will awaken something in you. Why? Because you have some experience of suffering, right? If we didn't have any at all ever, that's why it's such a big obstacle. One of the reasons it's an obstacle to be in the God realms, right? The higher realms, because they have such little experience of suffering, right? That it's hard to actually have empathy and compassion, right? So you have to start with understanding your own suffering. And again, because the Buddha taught about these deeper and deeper levels of suffering. So yes, it does also require some reflection, because it's not just suffering of sickness, of pain, loss, right? Fear, right? That's one type of suffering, but then there's this deeper level, which just is being in this state where we're subject to karma and afflictive emotions, destructive emotions, right? Just having the possibility of becoming angry, becoming attached, right? Having this kind of projecting desire. Not all desire is afflictive, but project desire that is projecting something that's not really there, right? Those all are stemming from ignorance. Ignorance is what kind of ignorance here? The root of samsara, the root of suffering, the ignorance that misapprehends, misperceives the way that ourselves and all phenomena exist. Okay? So look through your body and mind, look through your body, where am I? In the head, torso, arms, legs, feet, fingers, nails, skin, hair, in the heart, lungs, liver, bowels, intestines. No, no self there. Look in your mind. Eye consciousness, ear consciousness, my seeing, my hearing, my smelling, my tasting, my touching, feeling with the body. Where's I? No I there. My sense of well-being, peace, happiness, joys. No I there. Fear, anger, frustration, depression, sadness. No I there. That's the mind. Okay? So you look through your body, you look through your mind, there's no I there. Yet we still have this sense or this feeling that there's 24/7 some kind of core essence of me. That is the ignorance, that's the root of samsara. Because of that, we experience various forms of suffering. So that's actually considered a type of suffering, the condition of having that ignorance. Okay, so seeing that all sentient beings have the same ignorance, and thus all the forms of suffering that sprout from there then generate compassion, the desire to free all sentient beings, thinking not only is it important, is it good, is it a natural and genuine good for all beings to have happiness and be free from suffering, but I will myself do it. I myself will bring all beings out of this ignorance, bring them the wisdom that sees the true nature of themselves, of all phenomena, without a solid core inside, and thus liberate them from their suffering. And because there's no difference between myself and others, in that all beings wish for happiness in the same exact way I do, and they do not wish to suffer in the same way I do not wish to suffer, then there's no logical basis for preferencing my own needs, or my family's needs, or my nation's needs, or my planet's needs, or my species' needs. No basis whatsoever. So then, for all sentient beings, without disregarding a single one, without leaving out a single one, then I will free them all from their suffering. So generate that kind of strong compassion and leave your attention or your awareness focused there for the next few minutes. Dedication. Due to this merit may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure lands, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezig, may you stay until samsara ends.